So let's talk about CSS layouts, modern CSS layouts. I find particularly weird when we interview a junior developer and you ask that person to build a basic layout with CSS, and the first thing the person does is to do something like float left. Have you heard of these things? Float left, float right. I mean, this is wrong. This was the way we used to deal with layouts in the 90s. So if you apply to a junior developer position and you build a layout and you use float, you're never going to get the job. Because if you're a junior position, if you're a junior developer, you are expected to not to know the majority of the things, but at least the few things you know should be fresh. You should know what the market demands now, not what the market demanded in the 90s. That means you follow the wrong learning path. That's it. Yeah? So we are not going to talk about how we used to orchestrate our layout in the 90s, because that was painful. Let's talk about modern CSS. So imagine that I want to display a list of characters. So I got the, for instance, Boris, Jeremy, and Donald. So visually speaking, how will these three elements be represented? In one column, in one row?
One column.
So one column means one after the other.
Maybe divs or block.
Fantastic. I like that, Adam. I like that. You're right. You see? One after the other. By default, when you create a div, yeah, it tries to conquer all the available space, horizontally speaking. That means if you go to divs, they will be displayed one after the other. By definition, divs are block-based, as Adam said. Yeah? If you cannot visualize that, let me add a class name. So back to my CSS. Ooh. You see? Each element fills all the available space. Yeah? They're very aggressive. This is Germany in World War II. Yeah? So, historically speaking, doing something as simple as changing the positioning, mind that you want to display these three elements side by side in the same row. That simplistic thing has been a pain in the ass in CSS, historically speaking. There were different approaches. Once again, you could use floating, error-prone, many height issues. You could use tables. None of these were actually good enough. Thankfully, in the recent years, CSS has made huge effort to improve the ability of building layouts. So now there are two techniques that massively simplify the process. Let me present you the first one. The first one is called Flexbox. So Flexbox is a very easy way to orchestrate your unidimensional layouts. So whenever you want to deal with a list of elements that you want to display in one row or in one column, Flex is your friend. And how do we deal with Flex? It's quite easy, actually. You need to look after two things: the parent element, the container, and then the individual elements. So when referring to the parent container, if you check some documentation on the internet, they used to refer to these things like the container or the wrapper. Yeah? You can call them however you want. Yeah? I'm just talking about the de facto standard way of calling them, container. All right, so the parent element, the container. So now what do we need to do? Well, we just simply, on the CSS container, display, not in line, but flex. That's it. One line of CSS. By setting the display to flex on the parent element, then we're making all the direct children to be displayed one after the other on the same row. Look, you see? You see? So if we open DevTools, let's see what happens if we disable the flex. You see, I select the container, and now if I untick, pop, 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 you see, just by writing one line of CSS, you can make a big difference on your user interface. And some of you may be thinking, but wait a minute, if we display the elements in one column, at least they fill all the available horizontal space. However, when we enable display flex, that looks a bit weird, right? Because there is a lot of empty space on the right-hand side. So how do we force these three items to fill all the available space horizontally speaking? You need to add a second line of CSS. On the child element, I call it item. You can refer to them as element or whatever you want. I think item is fairly standard. On the child element, you need to add a new line of CSS called flex row. And then you give a number. For instance, number 1. Look at the impact of my change. Boom. You see? By adding flex row 1, look, I'm forcing my elements to fill all the available space, regardless of how large my screen is. The columns are equally distributed along my viewport, along my screen. So just with these two lines of CSS, first of all, display flex on the parent, and then flex row 1 on the child, on the children, then we managed to build a nice layout with different columns. Will it work if we add a fourth character? Can anybody tell me what will be percentage-wise, what will be the width of each column? Correct, Daniel, 25%. Yeah, no matter how large or how small the screen is, 25%. But now, let me ask you something. Let me get rid of the last character for now. We've got only 3. What that number means? It's a number, but you know, I can type anything, 2, 3, 4. Yeah? So this number is important if we want to change the size of one particular column. For instance, let me add a class name. I want to, because of whatever reason, highlight Jeremy. I want Jeremy column to become larger. So I can add a new class like, I don't know, special or important. It doesn't really matter. Yeah? So now I can add a new class name. And then I can change the flex row of that particular column. What that means? Look. Still, we have 3 columns. However, in reality, virtually speaking, we got 4 columns. Why? We got the first column, item, which is Boris, and this column is spanning one virtual column. We got 1. Then we got the second one, which is Jeremy, that in reality is spanning 2 fragments, 2 spaces, 2 virtual spaces. And then we got a third column, Donald, spanning 1 virtual space. So in reality, how many slots our column has? 4. 1 plus 2 plus 4. Because we got 4 slots, and the second one spans 2 percentage-wise. What's the width of the Jeremy column? Correct, 50%. So now Jeremy is 50% of the available width, Boris is 25, and Donald is 25. What happened? Let me get rid of the special one for now. So, even distribution of the space. What happened if I change flex row to 2? What will be the, once again, percentage-wise, what will be the width of each column? The same, correct. Why the same? Because how many virtual columns, how many slots our layout has? Wrong? 6. That's correct. Boris spans 2 out of 6. Jeremy, 2 out of 6. Donald, 2 out of 6. 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. That's why nothing really changes. Yeah? If I type 10,000,
It'd be the same.
it's the same.
Yeah, that's why I said 3.
Second?
That's why I said 3, because essentially it's like you have 3 items, and if you keep the same.
Yeah, but my question is, how many virtual slots do you have? Not 3, but 6. So how many virtual columns do we have now? Correct, 300. Yeah? That doesn't mean there's going to be any change visually speaking, but internally, technically speaking, we got 300 columns. Each one, each element is represented by 100 columns out of 300, so nothing changes. So to me, that feels stupid. When you come across that piece of code, someone did something wrong.
So this flex row, let's say within container we have loads of divs.
Yes.
This flex row number is going to affect all the other flex row numbers.
Yep.
How?
Yeah, of course, that's a relative way of measuring. So once again, if we got 1 on the columns, but one of them has 2, the second one is larger just because the other ones are smaller. But if we change that to 3, how many virtual columns, how many virtual slots do we have now? 8, that's correct. 8. Now, it's a bit hard to see. It's hard to see, but Jeremy is in reality smaller because it spans 2 out of 8. Boris, 3 out of 8. Jeremy, 2 out of 8. Donald, 3 out of 8. Yeah? Obviously, if we change it to 1, now we got 7 virtual columns. Jeremy is even smaller. Yeah, so definitely. So the number is relative to the other numbers. Yeah. Any questions?
Is there a property flex row auto?
Flex row auto. Interesting. I don't think so. However, there is a property called flex row 0. 0 is a special number. 0 means that column will be as small as possible. And what as small as possible means? It will be only as large as the content is. Look. It's pretty cool, yeah? It's pretty cool. That's particularly convenient. You know, when you are navigating on a website and you got a header and you get a button, the button has a fixed width, yeah, of maybe 60 pixels, and then the remaining space is whatever. Yeah? So that's that type of things. So Jeremy has some sort of fixed width. Now, if I resize my window, everything else surrounding Jeremy will change, but not Jeremy.
How do you calculate how many columns you have when you have 0?
How do you calculate how many?
Usually we'll see 3 columns, but
Yeah,
are they not
so
supposed to have the same?
yeah, so that's a good question. That's a special case. So the way CSS works in this particular use case scenario is, first of all, it will allocate space for Jeremy because Jeremy has a fixed width. What's the fixed width of Jeremy? 56 pixels because that's the size of the text. That's the first thing. 56 pixels. So then it will move Jeremy away from the calculation, and what's the remaining space? The remaining space is what's the size of the window? 1,000 pixels, more or less. So CSS will say, all right, I got 1,000 pixels minus 56, 940 pixels. Yeah. So then it will equally distribute 940 pixels for Boris and Donald because they both got flex 1. Essentially is 940 divided by 2. So 470 on the left and 470 on the right. Okay? Of course, we may have multiple columns with flex row 0. So how will it look like now?
Small followed by nothing.
Correct. Yeah, you can see Boris and Jeremy spanning a very little space on the screen, and then Donald trying to conquer everything. I think it's a good analogy about how the world works these days. Yeah.
What will happen if you add some padding to it?
Some padding, fantastic, fantastic. Let's add some padding. So if you add some padding on the item,
Add some padding to the Flex Grow 0, those special items.
okay, that's the same thing. Same thing. So the padding will apply definitely. Yeah, padding will apply only to these two, but that's it. So once again, flex 0 means the as small as possible. If there is padding, you still need to respect the padding. Yeah? Any questions? No? That's the way flex works. That's pretty much it. I mean, obviously, Flexbox is a huge wall. Yeah? So there are many other properties that we are not going to tackle now. But at least these are the basics. If you really like Flex, two things. First of all, CSS tricks. So if you search on Google, CSS tricks, Flexbox, a complete guide to Flexbox. So here is a very nice article, and I like it because they separate properties applying to, oh, what happened?
You can expand it.
Yeah. Properties applying, still loading. Properties applying to the parent, the container, the wrapper, and properties applying to the children. So that's pretty cool because here you can see visually speaking how to align, how to, it's pretty cool. I like it. It's quite intense. You see, it's many things. It's very powerful, but I particularly.
Probably best article for like Flex.
Yeah, I agree on that. Also on the Coded platform, on the intermediate track. So if you go to training, CSS, upper intermediate, for instance. By the way, we are adding support to lower beginner and mid intermediate. If everything is okay, that should be ready by the end of March. But for second?
For HTML.
Yes. For now, you just have upper beginner and upper intermediate. So as part of upper beginner and upper intermediate, you got few topics. So for instance, Flexbox. So if I select Flexbox, you got things like, you see, that's pretty much what we've done today. Create a layout of 3 columns, playing with dimensions, responsive design for tablets, for mobile phones. You see, making one of the columns wider, playing with multiple rows. So, this type of things. Yeah? So that's the first one. I think there is a second one about more advanced use cases scenarios. Aligning stuff horizontally and vertically at the same time. This type of exercises, very complex layouts. Yeah, so you are obviously invited to play with them. So that's about Flexbox. And now let me present you the alternative to Flexbox, which is Grid. Yeah? Grid is an even more powerful version of Flex. Yeah? And that means that you may be thinking, but I find Flex powerful enough and complex enough. Eventually, what's the point of dealing with something more complex? That's true. However, let me tell you something. From my experience, at the moment, I pretty much use Grid all the time. Even if it's more complex, there is one single property, just one single property of Grid, not available on Flex, as far as I know. And if I'm wrong, let me know. Just because of that property, Grid makes my life much easier. I'll talk about this property at the end of this session. But before talking about that, let's try to build the same example using Grid. Yeah? So let me remove my CSS. So I essentially got a list of characters, one after the other. So I'm starting again. Yeah? I'll try to build the same example, and then it's up to you to decide which one do you prefer. So on the container, if you remember before, we did display what? Flex. So now, what the hell? Display grid. That's it, yeah? Display grid. and not yet. I was a bit optimistic, yeah? But that's the first step, display grid. So let me go to the item and once again add some padding, just for readability purposes. Padding, border, give me a color, guys.
Red.
Now, better color.
Magenta.
Magenta, I like that, magenta. Cool. Fantastic, that's the default behavior, one after the other, no problem at all. So with grid, one of the reasons why I like it is because you can manually specify the look and feel of your layout. With Flex, the layout was built automatically, and then you specify the width of your particular columns. With Flex, you do it in one single line. Grid, template columns. You see, you are explicitly telling, hey, I want 3 columns. With Flex, you didn't say that. You didn't say how many columns, right? With Flex, you just said all the columns have Flex row 1, and maybe one of them has Flex row 2. So, first of all.
Question. How many values can that take?
How many values? As many as you want.
Can it take more than 4 values?
Here, of course. Why not?
I don't know, I thought it was up to 4 values.
No, that's not true. You can. Well, I mean, let's figure it out. I think you can take as many as you want. Eh? So, can anybody predict how my layout will look like?
Have the same width. The items will have the same width.
The same width. So will they span all the available width on the screen from the beginning to the end?
No,
I think
no, gonna be just 3 of the 5.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. Yeah.
we have
How
5
many?
columns, right?
Correct. How many virtual columns do we have now?
5.
5. How many elements do we have now?
3.
Correct.
Sorry, Ricardo, what does FR stand for?
Fragment.
Fragment.
Yeah. I don't know why I keep saying virtual columns. Fragment is the right word. Yeah. So look, actually, something beautiful about grid with Chrome. If I hover the container, can you see the boxes? So grid is telling that there are 2 empty slots on the right-hand side because I wanted to have a layout with 5 columns.
Okay. So I guess if you remove those last 2,
Yes,
because you have 3 items, it will span across the whole row.
that's absolutely correct, Panos. Yeah? Can anybody figure out how can I make the second column larger?
You have the 2FR.
Fantastic, Alan. Yeah, 2FR here. Oh. So you see, I'm building the same stuff as with Flex, but the syntax is different. The syntax is different. So my main reason to use Flex is when I don't know how many columns I need to display. With Flex,
Say that again, Ricardo. Sorry. So the only reason to use Flex is
my only reason today to use Flex is if I don't know how many columns I have. Or let me rephrase that. Let me bring back Flex. Container, display, Flex, and then item, Flex, row. Actually, I can keep the item as it was. So, as you can hopefully see, I'm bringing my Flex example back. So what I did is Flex row 1. Yeah, it works. If I add a 4th column, if I add a 4th character, Angla, my layout works fine. If I remove 2 characters, my layout works. You see? So from a CSS point of view, it's pretty cool. It doesn't matter how many characters, they will always fit all the available. You know when you create a challenge? So for instance, Adam created some challenges yesterday. So if you go to challenges, that's a good example of grid. Of Flex. In this particular use case scenario, you got 2 columns, but then he created later on a new challenge, 1 column. Yeah? So regardless of how many challenges you got, the layout will be flexible enough. You see, 3 columns, 1 column. So Flex plays really well with that sort of dynamism. However, if I try to represent the same problem with grid, it's not that simple, because with grid, I have to specify how many columns I have. So for instance, 3 columns. So with 3 columns, it was like a chart. But if I add a 4th, sorry, if I remove 1 character, it doesn't change.
So it's not as dynamic.
It's not as dynamic by default. I think, because I don't know any, grid is way more complex than Flex. I think there is a way to tell grid, please try to span all the, I think there is a way, but I don't know that way. Yeah, so I cannot tell you, it's not that obvious. It's not the natural behavior, it's not the default behavior for grid. And look, that's a problem, but can you tell me what happened if I have actually 4 columns? Look at my CSS.
You get one, another right hand on the second.
That's correct, Panos. Flex will try to allocate Angela on the right-hand side, but grid didn't even try, didn't even bother. With grid, I said, hey, my layout has 3 columns. Is one better than the other? Not necessarily. Sometimes you want to do that. Sometimes you want to have 3 columns. So you got new elements. Imagine, I don't know, you're building a grid of pictures. You want to have 3 pictures per column. If you got more pictures, you drop them below, yeah? So I'm not saying one is better than the other, but sometimes you want one behavior, sometimes you want the other behavior.
Have you ever used both of them together?
Yes, of course, yeah, absolutely, many times. You can have grid and flex inside, or flex and grid inside. Absolutely, yeah. Look, when talking, here's a good example. Here we're using flex and then grid inside to display your picture. So definitely you can combine them. Yeah, you can combine them. So yeah, once again, there is no actual advantage of one or the other. Depending on the scenario, depending on what you want to build, you may want to use one or the other. However, technically speaking, there is a way to differentiate them. So flex works really well when you want to work in one direction. You want to display all the elements in a single row or all the elements in a single column. Yeah? However, when you want to build a proper grid of rows and columns, flex doesn't work. Flex is unidimensional. Flex is unidimensional, either vertically speaking or horizontally speaking. However, grid is multidimensional. Let me show you an example you'll never be able to build using Flex. Back to the code-edit platform. If you go to training, we got 2 modules about Flex, and I think 2 modules about grid. No, it's actually a single module about grid. So the questions are, some of the questions are pretty similar, as you can see. So building a list of elements, blah, 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 different row, different widths, all these things, yeah? Centering, it's the same thing. However, look at question number 5. A proper layout. You will never build something like that with Flex. With grid, that's possible. Yeah? I don't want to say it's easy. You need to look after things that we haven't covered today, but you can create areas, and you can, you can do that. You can do that. Yeah? So grid is way more powerful. Likewise, if you go to CSS tricks, so CSS tricks grid, you will find another really nice article. To me, it's probably not as nice as Flex, but it is true that that's probably because grid is way more complicated. Look at the length of the article, guys. It's insane. It's very complex. It's very complex. Yeah. However, first of all, before I forget, talking about Flex, if you want to master Flex, apart from the CSS Tricks website, there is a very nice game called Flex Frog or something like that. Flex Froggy, where you build a game. You need to make the frog moving around using Flex. Yeah? It's a good way to practice with Flex. And likewise, I think it's from the same author, but I'm not 100% sure. There is another very nice game called Grid Garden, I think it's called, to practice the same idea, but to practice, you need to set up a garden for your house using grid. Yeah? So it's pretty cool. It's a very fun way to learn these things. At the end of the bootcamp, if you want to find a job, it goes without saying that you'll be competing with other junior developers. And it goes without saying that these developers, they will know JavaScript, they will know React, hopefully not as much as you because you're going to progress more than them. And it's true that in many bootcamps in London, they don't even teach React and Angular and JavaScript. So I'm not even considering them. But, with other developers, even self-taught developers, you have to prove that you are better than them. So on top of the official training program, JavaScript, React, I recommend you to master something. What do you master? I don't care. But try to learn something that no one else really knows. Sounds a bit romantic, yeah? But no one really dominates Flex. No one really dominates Grid. So if you go to an interview and they ask you, do you like CSS? Yes, I love CSS. I love Flex and Grid. I'm sure many companies struggle to dominate these technologies. So it's a fantastic opportunity that you can add some value, immediate value to their team. Yeah? Flex and Grid. We've got 10 minutes, so let me present you 2 more things. First of all, I told you there was a magic property that I love about Grid. Let me go back to my Flex example. So now I'm building my layout using Flex. Let me remove one of the characters. Let's have it free. Imagine that I want to have some spacing in between my characters. How will you solve the problem?
We have Grid or Flex?
Flex. You see, I want some spacing here, horizontal spacing here, and some horizontal spacing there. Say it again?
Are we talking about
Flex, yes.
you justify content?
Justify content. No, that's not going to work. I want 30 pixels. I want 30 pixels gap between my characters. Margin, okay. Yeah, fantastic. Margin on the item, right? Like that. That's not what I wanted. I wanted 30 pixels. This is 60 pixels. I can show you if you don't trust me. You see? 30 plus 30, 60. I wanted 30. You may be thinking, oh, why don't you divide it by 2? Then put 15. Yeah? And then you are right, you got 30. However, what the hell is that? I don't want a space here. I don't want a space on top. I just want horizontal space with my elements. Not here, not here, not here, and not there.
Is there a Flex gap?
Space evenly.
Space evenly, wrong. Flex gap. I never heard about that.
I'm just asking.
No flex gap, no. That's tricky. I am trying to solve something trivial. I just want to add a fucking space between Boris, Jeremy and Donald. Yeah? Eventually, yes, you may solve the problem by adding a class name on Boris, and then, fair enough, I item dot first, and then I do margin left 0. Yeah.
You don't have to add a class.
Second.
You don't have to add a class.
I don't have to add a class. Fantastic. So I can add a pseudo selector, right? Item first, first of type, and then margin left 0. I can do something like that. Yeah.
I know where you're going. Is that gap?
Yeah. So, well, definitely, yeah. But for instance, what happened with the last one?
No, you're right.
Margin right. Sorry, you're right. Yes, margin right. And then, but still, I saw, fantastic. We solved the problem, but we still got a vertical margin. We don't want that. Yeah, of course, you can remove it doing that, right? But still, yeah, we solved the problem. Fantastic. We can go home. But to me, the solution is artificially complicated. I don't want to add weird pseudo selectors. I don't want to divide my desired margin by 2 because I want a 30. It feels overcomplicated. Look how cool, how sexy the same problem is using grid. So I'm going to go back to my grid approach. See? And now, grid gap 30 pixels. Boom. Sorted. Simple problem, simple solution. As you can see, grid gap will add the space between my elements. So there is no space on top, no space at the bottom, no space on the very left, no space on the very right. Just between my borders. Grid gap. That's the reason why I love it. Yeah?
If you add a fourth element, it's gonna go underneath, it's gonna be a space on top, no?
That's correct, Ian. If I add a fourth element, yeah, again, the gap applies between the margin, the borders. If the borders collide, then grid will separate them, which is okay. Imagine that you're building a calculator. I think, Adam, you've been building a calculator, yeah? So grid works like a chart, because with a calculator, you work the exact number of rows and columns on the same space. So grid is definitely the best way to build the calculator. You use grid or flex?
Grid. I studied grid for 3 days. and
Fantastic.
That
Yeah?
whole article. Yeah.
Cool. Any questions? One last thing. Let's talk about mobile. Let me go back to my flex approach. Imagine that we decided to use flex. I don't care about the gap and things like that anymore. So, you know. Yeah, I did something. Where's my display flex? Sorry, the flex row, right? Flex row 1. And let me remove the fourth character for simplicity reasons, and then hit it. So imagine that we want to build an app, a mobile-friendly app. And, you know, that's correct, yeah? We got 3 characters. But eventually, you know, you can emulate mobile by clicking on this button, toggle device toolbar. If I click here, I can play with different devices, like for instance, iPhone 6, 7, and 8. Yeah? Be careful. This is a low fidelity emulator. This is just emulating the viewport, the size of the screen. It has nothing to do with the hardware, with the performance of the device. Yeah? But hey, as a first step, you know, it's quite cool because you can easily see, get a feeling, get a touch about how your app will look like on a mobile device. So I hope you agree with me that even though on mobile, imagine that we're building a quiz game. Who is the most horrible president in the world? And then you need to select 1, 2, or 3. Yeah. So I mean, on desktop it's fine. You can easily click. But I hope you agree with me on mobile. If you got a fat finger, it's a bit difficult probably. So you want on mobile to change the layout. Yeah. On mobile, you want to display one character after the other. Yeah. So let's introduce a bit of mobile design here. So on mobile, you can do something like that. Media. And then I think with parentheses, max width 600 pixels. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a basic CSS rule that will only apply if my viewport is below or up to 600 pixels. Yeah, that's the idea. So here I can do anything. Like for instance, on the container, let's change the background color. Background color yellow. Let's just do a smoke test to see if it works. You see? Actually, I'm zooming. Let me go back. I'm zooming the screen. That's why it looks a bit weird. That's the original resolution. Yeah. So you cannot see that, but my resolution is 1000 pixels, 900 pixels, 800 pixels. At 600, the boxes, the backgrounds will become yellow. Yeah. 700, 650, 612. Boom. You see? So my media query is working. That's a media query. However, I don't want to change the background color to yellow. What I want to do is to change the layout. Does anyone know how to change the layout from row-based to column-based? Flex direction. I love that, Minji. Flex direction. What? Column. Easy peasy. Yeah. So now, look, 610. Boom. You see? So I'm changing my user interface, and I hope you agree with me because now the buttons are larger. It's a bit easier to select the right option. Okay? So that's the way you can first of all introduce a media query, and that's the way you can essentially change the direction of Flex. And by the way, have you ever heard about mobile first development? What is that?
So you start from mobile and then escalate up to tablet.
Correct, that's correct. That's mobile first development. There are many examples of mobile first application. Instagram is probably the most famous one. Yeah? Instagram, if you download the app, it looks really cool, all the things. Then if you check the Instagram app on desktop, it looks a bit weird. It looks like they didn't put so much love on it. Yeah? That's why, because their main priority was mobile, because they obviously understood that their main source of players is on mobile. Yeah? Codere is not mobile first, because our main source of players is on desktop. But things may change. Maybe one day it will be on the other way around. Yeah? So let's change the example mobile first. Mobile first means instead of max width, you should put min width. That means your default styles are for mobile. So can anybody tell me what do I need to change to get the same behavior but following mobile first guidelines?
Which, what was the outside? You have to put it inside the media query.
No. So the styles outside of the media query are mobile.
I mean, like the flex wise, like the flex direction.
Where?
So you have to put flex direction.
Flex direction what? Column, correct, because we are doing now mobile first. On mobile, hey, that's my main priority, column. And then what?
Put it in
Row, correct. You see, now we're doing the opposite. The result is the same, mobile and desktop. However, from a development point of view, we first focus on mobile, and then if the resolution goes about 600 pixels, we do the necessary changes just for desktop. Yeah? That's what we call mobile first development. Yeah? It goes without saying, you're more than invited to follow these principles because they are very powerful. When in your CV, in a job interview, you say that you embrace mobile first development guidelines or principles, sounds very powerful to me. Any questions?
Do we have in grid? Do we have same as grid template rows?
Yes, you have grid template rows. Yeah, as
It
main.
works in the same way.
Yeah. Instead of specifying the columns, you can specify the rows. So yeah. So what about Flix? What about grid? Let's solve the same problem using grid and mobile first. Is this, guys, is this mobile first? No? Why not, Emprima? Correct. That's the desktop version with the free columns. So what should I put here instead? Say it again? Grid template rows, or can I, to simplify things, can I just do that?
Yeah.
One column, yeah? Easy. One column. And then on desktop, the other way around, yeah? It's the same thing. So, we got the gaps and everything. Look, you see? Mobile, one column, desktop, three columns. Any questions? No? So, once again, guys, Flex and Grid, super important topics. I strongly suggest you to create a project, play with it, make sure you master it, because it will open you many doors. Don't forget something. Regardless of which company you start working at, they will have plenty of really good JavaScript developers. But unless you work for a big company, they may lack some good CSS developers. And I'm not asking you to be a UX designer, someone with the ability to predict behavior. No, I'm talking about someone being able to translate something that someone wrote in a paper into an actual web application. Many startups lack that sort of skills. Yeah? So it's an opportunity for you to prove that you can fill the gaps that these companies have. Yeah? You are unlikely to impress a company based on your JavaScript skills, but you can easily impress a company based on your CSS skills. Okay? So thank you guys.